So I'll introduce myself first with that picture, which I was saying to a couple of my colleagues before, I'm not a huge fan of, even though I took it and it's of me. So I'm Alex. I'm an education practitioner at the college. I started working here in January, so I feel like my feet are under the table now. I've settled in. The college itself has existed in various forms since 1919, and we're an educational charity which promotes cooperative values, ideas, and principles within society, within cooperatives. Um, Presumably, seeing as you're here, you have some idea of the college itself. The picture there is of the building up in Hollyoake House in Manchester, where we have a base. So the session outcomes, like I said, the session today is called Connecting to the Why. The idea being we want to reflect on a sense of purpose and how it can influence and hopefully support motivation and engagement. Identify ways to communicate and reinforce this shared purpose to inspire and motivate others, and apply practical techniques to help ourselves and colleagues or other people that we're working with stay connected to this meaningful work and learning. And hopefully, in the next 55 minutes or so, you will get some sense of how to do that. So you usually, when we like to open up the space and allow everyone an opportunity to tell the rest of the group how they're feeling, how they're doing today, maybe something that they've done recently, what kind of mood they're in. Because we've got such a short session today, I'm going to ask you to just type something in the chat if that's okay. So let me know. Um, let me know how you are. Let me know just a couple of words. How are you feeling about the session today? How are you feeling? Fair to middling. I won't complain about fair to middling, at least broadly positive, I hope. We always say role, rank, and ego are left at the door. We care about who you are, and we care about how you engage with this session, not your status outside of it. Thank you, Cindy. That's good to hear. Kat, better than yesterday. Looking forward to the session. Haley, feeling good, but wish I had as good weather as Jude. Not good, not good where you are, Haley, or just not as good. It's all right here, but not quite as good as down there. I'm jealous. I'm on the south coast too, but not in such a nice bit of the south coast. Just waiting to see if anyone else is going to put anything in the chat. Great. Yes. I'm loving the sun too, but I'm becoming slightly worried about how much sun we're getting and how little rain we're getting. I think that's a sign of perhaps not aging, but perhaps just becoming a little more boring. Not just enjoying sun and thinking, oh, I've got to water the garden every evening and every morning because it's too sunny. Let's move on. If you're still typing something, if you haven't told us how you're doing yet, please continue to type. Just let me know. I'll still pick it up, and the rest of the group will too. So we're going to start the session, and we're going to start with talking about some theory of motivation. So this is a theory by somebody called Daniel Pink, who, when I was researching this session, he seems like quite an interesting man. So he's now an author who writes about researches and writes about this sort of stuff about motivation and things like that. But he formerly worked for Al Gore, the American presidential candidate in 2000, I believe. I don't know why I said in and then let myself into a fact that I wasn't confident about. I think in 2000, I think he lost to George Bush. And now he writes about things like this. And he's broken down motivation into three separate areas, those being autonomy, having control over how we work. So that might mean the freedom to approach a task from a variety of angles in a way that suits you and the way that you work best. Mastery, meaning the desire to improve and grow. So in a workplace, that might be seeking out training opportunities, education, things like that. And purpose, feeling that work contributes towards something meaningful. And if we're thinking as speaking as somebody who works for the cooperative college, a purpose contributing towards something meaningful might be quite a powerful motivator in a cooperative context. If you're thinking about the social purpose of an organization or helping people, but it applies to other organizations as well. And the distinction that I'm drawing here is between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So you've possibly heard those terms before. The distinction I'm drawing is intrinsic motivation coming from within and extrinsic motivation coming from without. So that might be intrinsic motivation is these things. It's a sense of purpose, enjoyment, excitement, not carrots and sticks. So extrinsic motivation might be if I reach my targets, I'll get a bonus. It's not something that comes from inside you and really reinforces your sense of purpose. It's something that comes from outside that will help you possibly achieve a sense of motivation. The reason we're focusing on intrinsic motivation in these three ways is because it's more sustainable long term. It gives you something to draw upon. If life is difficult, you're not necessarily going to focus on the bonus which you might receive, but what you might do is think about who you're helping, the social purpose of your work, for example, something that comes from within. I'm going to ask you to use the chat again or unmute yourself and tell me an answer to this question. But I was thinking about a time or asking you to think about a time when you felt highly motivated, either at work. A lot of the things we're talking about, I'm framing within a work context, but actually these things apply to learning outside of work, lifelong learning, for example. Last year, I finished doing a master's degree, which has nothing to do with work, but still requires a huge amount of motivation, or community work, or volunteering, or anything along those lines. So motivation applies to all of them equally. So when you think of a time when you were highly motivated, either in work or out of work, are you able to tell us briefly what were you doing and why do you think that situation was so motivating for you? So if I think about my own sense of motivation, I think that I enjoy running sessions like this, and I enjoy facilitating conversations and discussions on topics which I find interesting. And that gives me a sense of motivation. It makes me want to do a good job. If you would like to, you can unmute yourself and provide an example verbally, or if you'd be happier to type something in the chat and just think about a time when you felt highly motivated. And why do you think you felt so motivated? Could you relate it back to autonomy, mastery, or purpose? So my example was relating to a sense of purpose, I think. I'll give you a minute to think and I'll have a drink of water. So Kevin says, completing my dissertation on devolution in South Yorkshire, mastery of a topic I have some expertise in. Absolutely. So learning, researching, gaining that mastery. Absolutely. Meeting with committed volunteers with shared vision and purpose. Thank you, Neil. That's great. So not just something singular, a vision and a purpose that you have yourself, but meeting other people who share that vision can be a really powerful motivator. I know people who get involved with politics, for example, on a voluntary basis. There's something powerful about coming together with people who want the same things as you and trying to change.
I can't write anything because I haven't got chat on this phone for some reason.
Not a problem.
But I would say joining the cooperative movement practically about 15 years ago. I always knew about the cooperative movement because of my father was from the north, and his family were involved in the cooperative world up there. And I get a great deal of purpose in it. To me, it's almost like a faith thing, really. I just believe in cooperation, and I think it's a way that it's a third way which we should do all we can to engender and get people to join in. And I suppose a particular thing is I was chair of the pension trustees in Mid Counties Co-op actually, and I really banged on about communicating more with our pensioners. And so I really went into that, had a great deal of help from them, and we produced a newsletter and reached out to them really for the first time rather than just sending them a whole load of waffle from the trustees and our actuary. So that's me. I'm a committed cooperator, and I shall continue to be until my dying day.
I would hope for nothing less. Thank you, Jude. That's a really powerful contribution. Yeah, so absolutely. In that case, I don't want to speak for you or put words in your mouth, but I'm relating that to a sense of purpose. So
Yes,
there's something that you feel like if you invest time, energy into this movement, you will be able to contribute towards something meaningful. Is
yes,
that a fair reflection? Yes, thank you.
yes, yes,
That's great, thank you. And Hayley put in the chat, so volunteering for a charity organising clothing collections and fundraising for refugees. Lots of hard physical work, but we could see the benefit and how it was helping people. So I think that's elicited something really powerful as well, which is not just there is a purpose, but also you can see that purpose, and that purpose is tangible. It's something which you are making a difference, and you know you're making a difference because you can see that you are. And I will just read out Kat's example as well. So she's put in the chat, qualifying as a fitness instructor and setting up my own humble business, very humble, which was definitely a mix of wanting to improve and grow, as well as feeling a sense of purpose, helping others feel confident in a different environment while looking after their health. Yeah, and so you've related it to a sense of purpose, absolutely, but also a sense of mastery, perhaps. You wanted to help other people learn and grow, but you also wanted to do so yourself. Um, thank you, everybody. I'm going to move on to our first, well, I say first activity. I did just ask you to contribute then. So possibly our second activity. So activity one, motivation in the workplace. What can a workplace do to support these three areas? And again, as a reminder, when I say workplace, it can be somewhere you volunteer, it can be a hobby that you have yourself, it can be a hobby that you share with others. We're really just drawing upon what provides motivation and what can be done to support motivation. So in a few minutes, I'm just going to show you the Padlet, which I'm going to ask you to feed back on, and then we'll go into breakout rooms for 5 minutes, which will and then discuss and feedback. So hopefully, I've just gone on to my next slide. So can you see a Padlet? Can you see a screen which says connecting to the Y at the top? Great. Um, so to use the Padlet, as long as you can see something that looks a bit like what I've got here, autonomy, control over how we work. So if I've got an idea for how a workplace can support autonomy, I would press the plus, I would click where it says write something beautiful, and I would write a workplace can, and then I would press publish, and it would appear under there. But I'm not going to publish that because I didn't write anything and I didn't have an idea. The final thing to say before we go into our breakout rooms is that when I say what can a workplace do, that doesn't necessarily mean management. That doesn't mean things that come from above. That can mean either things which come from below, that might be employees supporting each other, or it might be in a more democratic cooperative sense, things that can happen sort of throughout an organization. So not just what can be done from above, what can be done from below, or what ideas that can sort of permeate an organization. I'm going to put that link to the Padlet into the chat now. So hopefully, if you click on that link, you'll be able to see the same thing I've got on my screen. If anyone, this is when I said if anyone's on a phone, it might look slightly different, but hopefully somebody in your breakout group is able to feedback. We only need one person. And that's great. So Kate, if you're able to set up the breakout rooms, we'll come back in 5 minutes and hear your discussion, the outcome of your discussion. See you in a bit. Welcome back, everyone. Oh, well, we'll start. We'll have a look at the have a look at some of the feedback that you put onto the Padlet. Thank you for doing that. Whoever the scribes were nominated as. Seeing as we've got we had two groups, two breakout groups. Would anybody from would anybody from so whoever Jenny's group was, who wrote having trust in members/employers supported by a democratic management structure. Would any of your group like to feed anything back about your conversations about any of the three areas? Just where did the prompts you? Was there anything that you stumbled upon that you'd like to feed back?
I think it was quite interesting. We were just putting our own thoughts through, and then towards the end we were like thinking about it in terms of what would you know, if you were looking for a job, a workplace, what would be a good workplace? I thought that was probably quite an interesting way of thinking of it, like how you would, if you were looking for, if you were designing your ideal workplace, then which of these things, and it probably all of these things here. So the things that we said about the fact that, you know, you need to know that your employer kind of had trust in you, that if your employer gives you time to learn new skills, and then probably a really important one is like an employer having a really clear vision that you can get on the back of as well.
Yeah, that's great. And it's something that I think I like that angle of thinking about if you were looking at an organization, how would you know you wanted to work for them? And if you can work out the trust that an organization places in you, then that's a really important thing. I suppose the difficult thing is is being able to tell that, possibly. Would anybody else from that group like to feed anything back? I might just read through your contributions if not. I can hear lovely bird song. It's somebody, and it's unfortunately it's not from me. Oh, Jude, I might place your. Are you gonna? Would you like to feed anything back?
No, I think it's all been said. I
Okay,
think
thank you.
I come from this cooperative idea that the workplace must be a place that you want to be in, and the team must be a place where you feel you're cherished and you're regarded as important. And I just made the point that with those things, the mastery comes along more easily because you feel comfortable and you feel you're not going to be blamed if you get it wrong, in sort of general terms.
Yes, that's a really nice angle actually. So thinking about less, it's not just about going to a training and but it's trying to implement the things you have learned, which necessarily means trying new things. And if you're trying new things, you need to have the confidence that you won't be blamed or that people people won't look at you and say, "Yeah, this was your idea. Why didn't it work?" So I think that's a really nice point. Yeah, and there's something about trust in there as well, isn't there?
Yeah.
Would anybody from the other group like to feed anything back?
Well, Jude was in our group, so I was
Oh,
in the
sorry.
group with Jude and Neil, and I was scribing. The time went really quickly. I felt like we could have had a conversation for much longer. But yeah, we just tried to add something for each one briefly. So basically, what Jude's just summarised, ensuring that everyone can contribute to decision-making processes. So it's that democratic angle of cooperativism. That comes down to the autonomy of how we control how we work. And then we were talking about the mastery from the kind of individual level as well as like the overall team level. So from an individual level, just having those informal networks of knowledge sharing can be a great way to kind of master and grow. And it's something that can be done without any budget, and it doesn't need top-down sort of dictation or anything like that. You can just form those relationships yourself. And then Neil was talking about the whole team and just making sure that everyone's aware that you've got those options to develop as a team and to grow. Do come in on this if I'm rewording what you were meaning, by the way, guys. And then when we looked at purpose, we were talking about well, yeah, again, coming back to what Jude was saying, just having that understanding as a whole about why we're there, really, really clear vision, and that, you know, every member, no matter what your role or what you're doing, understands their worth and their contribution.
That's really lovely. Yeah, thank you for that. I was picking out a few things there. There's something about the specific nature of a cooperative, which may lend itself to these things, especially possibly autonomy and purpose, especially, but actually also mastery, which does lead us into what we're going to talk about in a minute. And then there was something about your comment, which was making sure everyone understands that purpose. So there's something about communication in there, which I think is really important as well, which we're actually going to talk about afterwards. So, for those very helpful links. Can you see my slides again? Lovely. Not full screen anymore, but that's okay. So the cooperative values, in case anyone needed a reminder, of course they don't. But what we're going to think about is the links between the cooperative values and the autonomy, mastery, and purpose that you've just been discussing. So perhaps you've already started this discussion. So activity 2, cooperative values and motivation. So how do these cooperative values align with your own motivations at work, or like I said, in your wider life, in your hobbies, in your learning outside of work, or whatever it is that you do outside of work? And how can reinforcing these values help a team or organization maintain a strong sense of purpose? I'm going to just share a couple of examples in case these questions are slightly are not as clear as I would like them to be. But I was thinking about things like, if I go back to the values, something like social responsibility really clearly lends itself to a sense of purpose. And supporting other cooperatives lends itself to a sense of purpose. It's, if you're asking yourself, why are we here? What are we doing? How are we trying to change things? It's a bit like what Jude said earlier. You're a part of a movement. You are a cooperator, which gives you a really clear purpose. Perhaps equality and equity. If you're somebody for whom fairness is really important, and everyone being treated fairly, there might be something about democracy in here as well, of everyone having a say. Working in an environment where everyone is respected, treated fairly, might give you a sense of purpose in your work. It might, for example. So if you're, we're going to discuss how the cooperative values relate to autonomy and mastery and purpose. We're going to go into breakout rooms again in just a moment. I'm not going to ask you to feed back onto a Padlet or anything this time. We're just going to nominate somebody from each group, if that's okay, to just tell us a little bit about your discussions. And Kat, if you thought you didn't have enough, if you thought you could have just continued the discussion before for longer, perhaps you can discuss it a little bit now. I will copy and paste those questions into the chat just so you've got them there, and I will see you to hear back from your thoughts in just a few minutes. Welcome back, everyone. So I'm just going to run through those questions again one at a time, and then I'll ask you for the outcomes of your discussions. Again, if there's anything you'd like to put in the chat, if you're not comfortable unmuting yourself, or then feel free. But if it's probably easier just to unmute yourself and share your contributions there. So the first question was, how do the cooperative values align with your own motivations at work or in your wider life? Would anybody from either group like to feed anything back about how the cooperative values and their motivations are similar, or perhaps not? I'd be surprised.
We had quite a general conversation about the values just being kind of inherent in us, really, so we kind of practice them almost instinctively, but then we got into a bit of a deeper discussion about what individual people did, and Cindy was saying that she's working as a coach, and so self-help and self-responsibility are really key there. And that when people come, Cindy, for coaching, they initially expect advice, and part of the coaching process is to encourage them to help themselves and be responsible. And then Neil was explaining how he works with the homeless project in Birmingham, and that was really interesting because, and do jump in, Neil, if you want to, but he was explaining how initially the project was trying to kind of help people by doing things for them, and it's very much changed to doing things with people, and that's really changed the outcomes of the project. So I thought that was really interesting.
Neil, if you'd like to unmute, please do. But that sounded like a very a nice succinct summary from Jenny there.
You know, Jenny summed it up. It's transformed everything we're doing, our outlook, our approach, because it's become a cooperative in all but name, really. So yeah,
that's really wonderful. Yeah. So the idea of doing things with people, not doing things for people, and linking that to a sense of self-help, self-responsibility. Not in the same way, but it sort of reminds me of when we're planning some of these sessions, we think it's not necessarily about us telling you how to boost motivation at work. It's possibly more about facilitating discussions and providing frameworks in which people can work things out for themselves. And I don't know about your specific context, but hopefully I can provide you with some ideas, some sparks in which you think, oh, autonomy, mastery, and purpose, that's really interesting. That helps to break things down, and I can view things through a different lens now. Maybe I'm being too self-aggrandizing about what I do. Would anybody else like to feedback on that first question? If not, we can talk about the second question. Not a problem. So how can reinforcing these values, those being the cooperative values, help a team or organization maintain a strong sense of purpose? So we're moving away from maybe autonomy and mastery here and thinking really closely about the why, the purpose of what we're doing. If I go back to the values there, does anybody have any thoughts on that? How do these values link to a sense of purpose? I'm thinking possibly about social responsibility and caring for others, perhaps. But in different contexts, like Neil was saying, or like Jenny was saying with regards to maybe, or with regards to coaching, and Cindy, self-help and self-responsibility in some contexts may really come to the fore.
I think
Would
in
anybody like
our
to?
group, Kevin made an interesting point because he was looking at it from a kind of member's point of view, and about how sometimes these things don't translate down into, you know, what the membership understands. So he was talking about it from a credit union point of view, and a lot of that's just kind of people using the services of a credit union. But I also have a background with credit unions, and I can remember there was like a lot of work done to try and kind of communicate the bigger value, you know, like that, you know, so it wasn't just a case of here's a service that we provide and you take up the service. It was all the other things that were going on in the background, or by doing that, what that actually meant. So the kind of caring for others and the social responsibility side, it was that trying to kind of reinforce that the front end things were one side of it, but that allowed the other side, the kind of more the kind of principles and the values to be embedded in the wider work.
Yeah, that's really interesting. A specific credit union context. Yes, and as you say, people may just need a loan, and that's the only place where they're able to access one. But that's not necessarily what the credit union needs to be about. Or, you know, I might pay my £1 membership for co-op, so I get some offers, because I get cheaper shopping. But then there's no, similar to what you're saying. I mean, I'm using their services rather than being possibly an engaged member. So, like somebody mentioned earlier.
Sorry, can you
we're
hear
talking.
me? I've been trying to get
Oh.
through. Yep.
Yes, I can hear you now.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Well, I sincerely feel that we constantly fail to get this message of cooperation and this very simple idea that people in a credit union or any cooperative enterprise put in so that others who need can take out. You know, it's a basic truth. It's something, and some of these values are not broadcast enough, are not, we should make the USP of cooperatives, not just the offers, but the fact that we are part of a worldwide movement, and we can reach for the stars. You know, you
Thank you, Jude. Yeah, I think that's brilliant. Yeah, there's the sort of is that perhaps a tension, or perhaps the tension shouldn't be there, but between wanting to provide that service, but also wanting to talk about all the other stuff that you do as a cooperative. So yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. Thank you. So the next thing I'd like to talk about is communication. So it's not, as somebody mentioned earlier, it's not just about having a shared purpose. It's about communicating that and making sure it's communicated, broadcast through everything that the organisation does. And I've sort of picked out 3 points which I felt were important. This is by no means an exhaustive list, of course. And if you've got any suggestions of how these things can be, this purpose can be communicated, please do share. But I'll run through these 3 first. So having clearly defined goals, because it's easier to communicate your goals if they're clear and if they're clearly defined. And I've possibly put these 3 in the wrong order, because that really links to the last one, involving team members in goal setting. So that's a more democratic way of listening to the members of your organisation, allowing them to contribute when those goals are set in the first place, and creating a collaborative environment. So fostering a workplace culture which encourages that collaboration and communication. Some of these things are that it's not a simple quick fix. It's in everything that the organisation does. It's sort of something that, when we go back to what we were talking about, what somebody was talking about earlier, it's if you're looking at an organisation, it's something that you can sort of feel. It's not necessarily something that you can work out unless you're sort of embedded. You can see it very clearly. So our final activity, how can connecting to the why support motivation in your workplace? So I'm returning now to a very specific context of where you are based, what you do. I don't know what it is that you do, although we've had some hints during this session. What we like to do sometimes is allow for people to, rather than discussing points, to return to their own situation and think about that. So think of one way in which you can support a sense of shared purpose in your workplace or other areas of life. What might the challenges be in implementing this? So what we're going to do is, if you would like, you're free to turn off your camera. I'm just going to give everybody 2 minutes to discuss. Sorry, not discuss. That's the exact opposite of what I just said. To think to yourself about one action that you can take away from this session, perhaps return to the autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Is there something which your organisation or you in your organisation can do to support your colleagues' sense of autonomy, mastery, or purpose? And if you're able to feed back afterwards, I would love to hear your thoughts, as well as the challenges in implementing this. So I'll tell you when your time is up, and I would love to hear your feedback. So like I said, feel free to turn your cameras off and just take 2 minutes to think. And let me know, or let the group know, is there one thing which you can take away from this session, to think of a way in which you can support a sense of shared purpose in the environment which you've been thinking of, like I said, whether that's work, hobby, just something else. If you'd like to put that into the chat, you'd be welcome to. Or if anybody would like to unmute, please share. I won't pick on people individually, I don't think. Unless nobody shares, in which case I will.
I can say something. So one of the things that I'm a member activator with the co-op group, one of the things I do is run a forum, and I'm doing one at the moment with other co-ops in Bolton. And what I was already planning to do, so it's really nice to come to this and it reinforces it, is we had a very sort of introductory meeting saying who we all were. And my next thought was to actually agree like the purpose of the group and what we wanted to focus on. So I think that will really help. The challenges in implementing this at the moment are being priced out of actually room hire in Bolton, but I'll find a way through that. And also just the just people might come with very different ideas, but I'm going to set it up that people can think in advance as well. So yeah, hopefully we'll come up with a great shared purpose for the group to move forward with things.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Cindy. So in your specific context, you're thinking about beginning something, so you're taking it from the first steps. So you're thinking about actually coming up with that shared purpose in the first place, which is a different challenge to going into an organization. And does it have that sense of purpose? Does everybody feel that sense of purpose? How can we communicate that? So it's not easy and not more difficult, just a different challenge. Thank you, Cindy. Neil has put in the chat, all our planning meetings for our project to be open to all members. Absolutely. So you're sort of democratizing the process. You're of coming up with that purpose. And there's something about communication in there as well, isn't there? You're communicating that by democratizing it and opening up to everyone. It means that you don't necessarily need to communicate it because they're there and they can be there and they can be part of that whole process. I'll read out what Hayley said just in the chat, just in case anyone doesn't have access to the chat. So, Hayley said, what Jude said really resonated with me, remembering that we're all part of something bigger than ourselves and our own organisations. Being an active part in the cooperative movement is something we should be proud of and shout about. Yeah, exactly. So it's possible that just an inherent part of being a cooperator, being a part of the cooperative movement is something we can draw upon. We can think that we're supporting other cooperatives, that we're making that social good ourselves. So not just reminding yourself about that, but reminding other people as well. Communicating that sense of shared purpose and shared achievement, because it is something that's an achievement and it is something worth shouting about. If anybody else would like to share, please do. If not, I can move on to our summarizing slide. Well, thank you, everyone. So a summary of our Connecting to the Why session. So autonomy, mastery, and purpose can support motivation. It's important to remember as well that that's not necessarily exhaustive. There are other, if you're going into an organization and thinking, everyone looks so demotivated, why is this? It's not necessarily because there's a lack of autonomy, mastery, and purpose, but it may be. Clear communication of this purpose is vital. And the cooperative values can support a shared sense of purpose within an organisation. And thank you, everybody. Thank you for attending. Thank you for your time and thank you for your contributions during the session. If you're able to, you can scan this QR code up here with a phone or click on the link which we've just provided in the chat to complete an evaluation. So from the first drop-down menu, please select Co-operative College Webinar, and from the second, Connecting to the Why, to provide us with some feedback. I can open. It's 12:58. So if anyone has anything anything they'd like to share before we finish, please do. If not, you can go and have some lunch. Jude can go and enjoy the sun again. Thank you for your time, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed the session. And hopefully I'll see lots of you very soon.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks.